Welcome to Worlds Unbound. Make sure to visit the story page on Royal Road to support the author, or to follow along. Link in the description. Video created with permission from author. Toad Town, a Dungeon Core Parody. By Dosei. Chapter 31 Army? There stood 60 guards and 30 archers aligned before my fletchery and armory. Most wore the basic clothes of my loom minions manufacturing, but all had their proper weapons. It seemed now that the frog hide armor was a sign of seniority amongst my armed minions. To start off my evolution of a cavalryman, I took a mount and a guard and somehow managed to get both inside the armory's narrow doorway. Good thing your toad mounts are so squishy, Ama remarked. I flooded the building with essence, and suddenly a massive smoke screen obscured the entire building, pillars of light shooting out at random in a murky green light show. Even evolving my lord had not been so spectacular a show, but I saw the reason why, when the smoke dissipated and revealed that, not only had the minions inside evolved, so too had the armory. The building stood now 2 stories tall and was equipped with a gate next to its previously minion-sized entryway, in order to allow something bigger to get in and out. Hopping out of the new gate came the evolved toad mount and rider. The toad had bloated in size, becoming a lot wider, and its rubbery skin was now covered in dense keratin plates, making it look like the damned offspring of a toad and a lizard. Additionally, the front legs of the toad had fierce bone protrusions that looked like claws and were sure to be fierce weapons in battle. As for the rider, the first cavalryman of my settlement, he had undergone a similar metamorphosis as my lord minion, and was now designated as a toadkin. Unlike my lord, however, his transformation had not only removed his ears and altered his skin, but it had also altered his physique, bulking up his body so that he looked like a humanoid version of Toadicus. Name: Cavalryman. Occupation: Cavalryman. Species: Toadkin. Level: 20 of 80. Alignment: Lawful and Obedient. Faction: Toad Town. The frog hide clothes he had worn also morphed into chitinous armor of dense keratin, and the hat became a helmet that covered the top of his bald head and only left the bottom half of his head, near the jaw, exposed. His sword had somehow changed into a glaive, which more or less looked like the previous iron sword mounted on a 1.5 meter handle. Just to confirm what it actually was, I inspected it. Name: Sword Glaive. Occupation: Cavalryman's polearm. Species: Polearm weapon. Level: 1 of 100. Alignment: Looking forward to chopping heads off evildoers. Faction: Headchoppers Club. With Ima helping me by feeding my essence to the Mount Pen breeder, I evolved the rest of the cavalrymen over the next half-day, and when 20 of them were seated atop their superior toad mounts, looking all fearsome and whatnot, I bade them patrol my domain looking for troublemakers, and they all quickly hopped off to do just that. Good idea, Ima praised. Our settlement has gotten rather big, so it's good to be proactive, rather than having to always be the one to send the minions to where they're needed. Plus, urging your minions to be self-sufficient will lead to a better army down the road. Army? Is that what we're making? Yes. I got all nostalgic at the word. It reminds me of when Toadicus led all mature toads on a warpath through the frog pond. Those were some great times. Ama frowned, then quickly changed the subject. Next are the archers. When I evolved the first archer, the fletchery underwent a similar change as the armory, and grew into a 4-story tower of a building, with lookout holes at every floor, making it seem like the building could defend itself quite well if it needed it, and given that the honking calamity had already visited its wrath on this part of my settlement, it wasn't such a bad thing. Have you inspected the building yet? Ama asked. I can do that. You can appraise anything, he said. Remember how you appraised an onion? Oh, right. All right, inspect it. Come on, don't tarry. So prompted, I activated my appraisal and looked at the new fletchery. Name: Fortified Fletchery. Occupation: Fletchery. Species: Fletchery, crafting, building. Level 2 of 2. Alignment, defensively neutral. Faction, Toad Town. Immediately after, a message appeared.
Congratulations! For inspecting an evolved building, you have gained the Property Pimping perk. Property Pimping enables you to evolve any building in your settlement using your essence. Evolved buildings will have their positive and negative effects made stronger, and their productivity and efficiency will also increase, along with making them sturdier.
Is this why you wanted me to inspect it? I asked Emu. How else am I supposed to get around that dumb spoiler-free zone thing? It's rather hard to guide you when the system has decided I'm not allowed to spoil anything. What should I evolve first? My quarry? My guild office? The quarry is not a bad one to start with, Ama hinted. But first, evolve the rest of these eager archers already. They've been standing around waiting to be evolved all day. Oh, right. I picked the 11 other archers I needed and sent the other archers off to patrol atop the walls of the castle, the inner settlement, and the halfway completed quadrant walls. Those archers not picked seemed quite upset about it, but they could also get their evolutions when I became a castle town or if any of the sharpshooters died, which seemed likely to happen. After all the sharpshooters had been evolved, I noticed that their appearance differed quite a bit from the cavalrymen. Where the cavalrymen were bulked up and potent-looking, the sharpshooters had become tall and lithe, their evolutions seeming to make them more agile and nimble. Their armor, be it flimsy simple clothes from the loom or frog hide, had become form-fitting jumpsuits with pieces of hard plates protecting a few vital areas, like their neck, torso, and groin. Their heads were now also covered in a strange piece of armor over their eyes, which had a thin membrane over their eyes, which, when I looked at them, seemed to enlarge their pupils. Their bows had grown longer and more potent-looking. What kind of helmet is that? I asked Emu. They look like a form of sunglasses with a serious zoom to them. What do they do? Lets them see further, I guess? I inspected the glasses. Name, Smudge. Occupation, smudge on zoom lenses. Species, Glacius smudgicus aniingashelicus, stain. Level, 2 of 12. Alignment, hatefully despises unstained surfaces. Faction, big smiling fat lumpink. What the hell? Aim asked. And why is a smudge working for the big smiling fat lump? He's a god of hedonism and excess. Oops. I missed, let me try again. Name, zoom lenses. Occupation, sharpshooter's eyewear. Species, glasses tool. Level 1 of 1. Alignment, looking ahead. Faction, screw 20 of 20 Vision United. I sent the sharpshooters off to join the archers in patrolling atop the walls, then flew over to my quarry, where several dozen diggers were toiling away. Every impact of their picks was preceded by a chirping grunt of effort. Without sparing a moment, I sent my essence into the fundament of the quarry and it quickly began to glow, terrifying the workers within, but before they could escape, the deep pit was engulfed in light and smoke. When the smoke cleared, several diggers lay dead at the bottom, having fallen down off the ledges they worked on in their panic, but the walls of the quarry now glowed with many new deposits, some of which were clearly silver and gold, as well as some that were like the jewels I'd once seen at the bottom of the pond, before a big mud skipper had swallowed it. Emu came hopping over on the back of Goldie a moment later, witnessed the pile of dead minions at the bottom and sighed, but then he saw the new deposits and remarked, "All in the name of progress. Although," he added, "maybe warn them next time?" Chapter 32, Paragon of Snuggles. The sector dividing walls had neared completion at 3 of the 4 places where they bisected my domain, and work had begun on the outer wall of my settlement, which stood on the very outer edge of my domain. Given that my lands would not spread again until I reached the next evolution and completed some yet unknown to me tasks, I felt confident in taking this step to secure my settlement. Granted, I was still woefully unprepared for any attacks from the sky, and, as Emu was fond of pointing out, my defense did not amount to more than the strength of my guards and archers. Even with my powerful lord and toe-caller, as well as my new cavalry and sharpshooter corps, it would only take a handful of determined silver-ranked adventurers to end me. We're lacking aerial defense, Emma pointed out, mirroring my thoughts. The sharpshooters and archers aren't good enough? I asked. For lesser flying beasts, maybe, but we have nothing to deter the Calamity Goose 3 or something like a griffin or dragon. We would need specialty weapons to be able to injure those. Are you sure the Calamity survived that last fight with the adventurers? I'm certain. A sudden idea popped into my head and I used my "does my shit stink?" perk to figure out if it was a good idea. It came back 1087%, yes. Remember when I evolved those archers together? I asked Emu. Remember? It's like an imprint on the back of my eyelids. I'm gonna try something, I told him, then flew off from the sector wall we'd been perched atop. I could hear him yelling obscenities at me in the distance, but I ignored it. After having the mount pen breeder pull 2 fresh toad mounts out of the ground, I bade them hop a bit away from nearby buildings, and then I infused both of them with my essence. Emu came hopping towards me furiously, as my power made the 2 toads begin to melt and alter form, before light and smoke obscured the sight. The light began to turn a deep amber as time passed, and the silhouette of the 2 shapes in the smoke fused together to become one. Then, with an earthquaking poof, the smoke blew aside and behind stood a single shape. What the? Amos started, but then lost his words. I looked at the new creation, not really comprehending it either. System then suddenly appeared out of nowhere and threw herself at the new beast in my settlement, hugging it and disappearing into its thick fur.
Congratulations! For experimenting on the beasts of your settlement and evolving a new kind of beast, you unlocked the ability to construct a Beast Inventor Workshop.
Structures unknown? Beast Inventor Workshop, Hermit's Lodge. Unlocks the ability to evolve a crazy minion to mad scientist, and enables the invention of unique beasts for various purposes. Required materials: quarried stone, timber, wrought iron, silver dust, and gold dust. Amos stomped the ground angrily. This makes no sense, he cried, pointing at the massive beast. How does combining 2 toads' mounts make that? It looks cute, I replied. It's a blessed rabbit. A rabbit! Made from combining toads! It's not a rabbit, I told him, inspecting it with appraisal. Name Mel. Occupation: paragon of fluff and snuggles. Species: jackacorn. Level: 100 of 100. Alignment: looking for cuddles. Faction: Toad Town. The jackacorn was over 2 meters tall and 4 meters from hind to front. Its body was coated in a silvery white fur that was as soft as a blooming dandelion's puff, and its 4 paws were adorned with devasting claws that could easily carve through stone walls or dig massive tunnels in seconds. It had 2 large green glowing eyes, but most uniquely, it had an enormous horn with a spiraling groove going from base to tip. It also had a large, comfortable-looking dewlap, indicating it was female. Congratulations! It's so soft! System announced excitedly, burying herself further in the jackacorn's fur, disappearing from sight. Perhaps attracted by the commotion, Lord Toadscander came walking over with his retinue of fawning aristocrats and obedient servants. My, he said, getting closer to also take part in the cuddling. It is a fitting defender of my fair realm, he announced. Emu remained skeptical, sitting atop Goldie some meters away, while System, Toadscander, and the entire retinue ringed around the jackacorn to touch its soft fur. Suddenly it tilted its head down and stared straight at Emu judgingly. Chubby one. I demand to be petted. Emu rubbed his face in exasperation. It talks. Of course it talks. Possessing Lord Toadscander's body, I was sitting atop the jackacorn, as we moved through the settlement, letting all my minions take a break to pet the enormous fluffball. This is unironically the best thing you have done for your minions, Ama remarked. Never mind that, I said. I can feel. It must have happened since the last evolution, he replied. I can't feel anything when possessing the guild master though. HMIC. Let's find a feast of worms to celebrate. Absolutely not. After spending a day riding around my settlement, I got back to work and started construction on both the marketplace and the newly unlocked Beast Inventor Workshop. The workshop I placed near the Fletchery, Armory, and Mount Penn in the eastern quadrant. As for the marketplace, it gained a spot in the northern quadrant, at the middle of what was ostensibly the centrum of mercantile industry, as the baker, carpenter, and 5 merchant shops lay there. With Ama's eye for design, we rearranged some things, such that the baker and shops ringed around the marketplace building. I also added the toy store to the area, since I thought it was about time. Plus, the idea of toys seemed to excite System, though I had no idea what a toy even was. Without having told them to, the 5 merchants had all branched into different things. One sold raw frog meat, another sold the surplus stock of tools, another sold weapons, the 4th and 5th both sold random second-hand stuff. The carpenter had been busy making more carts, with my 3 original ones now functioning exclusively to bring stuff from the quarry to the industrious forges in the southern quadrant. With the next few carts he made, I would evolve some caravanners. After the toy store was finished, I looked for a happy minion to evolve to become its vendor, but it was pretty hard to find one. Ema! I complained. I can't find a happy minion. Yeah, no shit. It's called Consequences. Chapter 33 Dark Elf? Name Tabby. Occupation Chesticle Frog Swallower, Gold Rank Adventurer. Species Dark Elf. Level 82 of 100. Alignment Arrogant and unstoppably racist. Faction Chesticle Dynasty. Toady! Look! Look! It's a gold adventurer, I remarked in fascination. Not that, you airhead! It's a dark elf. Why are her torso glands so swollen? And what's the chesticle dynasty? Those are its mammary glands, he replied informatively. And I have no idea about the dynasty. He leafed through his encyclopedia for a bit. Ah. It's a relatively new dynasty, only 3 generations old, but they're powerful in the deep forest kingdoms of the western continent. It seems they're responsible for pulling dark elves back from the brink of extinction. Also, their name seems to refer to a genetic quirk of their bloodline, which gives them Big B. Why are all my minions looking at her torso pouches like that? It's a natural humanoid response. Tabby sighed. It was just another backwater town, though this one was more inbred and misbegotten than the last. Hurry up, Yopi! She called at her temporary companion. Name Yopi. Occupation Barista Battle Brewer, Iron Rank Adventurer. Species White Elf. Level 14 of 100. Alignment Unlucky but daring. Faction Lady Tabby's Packmule and Adventuring Guide. He came running, his lanky body straining under the weight of the enormous rucksack she had given him to carry. The tiny fairy companion Yopi had somehow been blessed with floated along behind him, staring daggers at Tabby. Name Popey. Occupation Adventuring and Lifestyle Coach. Species Fairy. Level 1 of 1. Alignment Clever and wise but always ignored. Faction Yopi's Fairy Coach. Is this really the place where I can find a quest worthy of my mettle? Tabby wondered out loud, looking around at the many disgusting inhabitants, who stared at her with their big eyes and lips, some of them even covered in scales. I assure you, Lady Tabby, Yopi told her. We heard rumors of this place in Heckenfeld. Popey added to back up her elven ward. Tabby turned to point at a fat, dark-skinned boy, who looked like a parody of her proud race. You there, fat one? Take me to your guild office. I swear, Toady, If you let this one die to the calamity, I will be so upset. How do you think that white elf got a fairy? Who cares, white elves are always weird. Seriously. Listen to me. I won't have the scion of a great dark elf dynasty perish because we sent them on an unbeatable quest. Oh, I started, looking at the trio. She just took the quest. No! Now spectating team, Tabby, Yopi, and Popey engaging in quest, Calamity Hydra Goose. Can I please leave now? Yopi asked, remembering the description of the quest that Tabby had picked. Not only had it been gold rank, but it had also taken the lives of 2 other adventurer parties. Absolutely not. You still owe me from running my favorite bathing suit. Yopi had bumped into Tabby at a luxury resort many kilometers northwest of Earl Sharpie's realm, quite literally bumped into her, and had spilled his newest coffee blend all down her swimsuit, irreparably staining it forever. The dark elf had, in return, demanded he pay her the 3 kilos of gold it had cost her to acquire it, but when Yopi had obviously not been able to afford so steep a remuneration, she had made him her adventuring guide, tasking him with finding all most difficult quests in the lands. By pure osmosis, Yopi had gained 13 levels and ranked up to becoming an iron badge in the guild, but he had never wanted to be an adventurer in the first place. No. His passions lay in brewing coffee. He wanted to travel all the continents in search of the best beans for his craft, not risk his life fighting monsters. Popey, his faithful companion, had unfortunately been dragged into this mess as well, but she had no real choice, given that she had been tied to Yopi since his birth, due to him being born on a particularly auspicious day. Though, given the trajectory his life had taken, it seemed more like he had been cursed rather than blessed, but it was no fault of his fairy coach, who always tried her best to steer him true. Finally a track, Tabby remarked. Yopi was already breathless from carrying the heavy rucksack for the dark elf, though he had a sneaking suspicious stuff kept falling out, given that it weighed significantly less now than 2 weeks ago. When he had time to stop and rest, he would need to check the bag to see if it had holes in it or something. What on earth is that? Tabby suddenly exclaimed, then with an ululating cry she charged into a ruined clearing with black shard earth all around. As she ran, the movements jiggled her enormous bee. Look out! Popey cried, and instinctively Yopi dove to his stomach as a spear of superheated plasma shot past, obliterating his rucksack, but somehow leaving his body unscathed. Ahead of him, the gold-ranking dark elf was flinging her needle-like fingernails at the 4-headed monstrosity, though to little effect. Her unique magic allowed her to control her fake nails like projectiles and, in Yopi's experience, there was woefully little that she couldn't decimate in seconds with the 10 impossibly sharp nail projectiles. But somehow, the 8-meter-tall calamity was impervious even to her attacks, though one of its 4 heads was covered in old burned scars that Tabby continued to aim for, hoping it was a weak spot. By the light! Popey muttered where she floated in front of Yopi, who still lay prone on the ground, too afraid to move. The fairy was holding her right hand up and forming a V with her index and middle fingers, between which a strange bubble had formed. He recognized it as her appraisal skill. How strong is it? He asked, knowing that it had to be over level 85 at least. 214 levels, she mumbled in disbelief. A crack of thunder split the air in half and made Yopi's ears ring. When he dared open his eyes again, he saw Tabby standing before the beast, her body charred to a crisp and little luminous snakes of light dancing across her skin. Then the 4 heads descended on her and each took a chunk away, leaving behind nothing but her metal boots. The ground rumbled as the monster waddled over to where he lay in the grass, using its 4 sets of webbed feet. Yopi and Popey looked up at their impending death. Spectating cancelled due to quest abandonment. No eligible adventurers remain in team. Bless it all to heaven! Aima blasphemed angrily, stomping his foot on the ground in anger. The honking calamity grew another head, I remarked. That's not good. Nothing is good about this, Amy yelled. Do you think the barista guy survived? What do you think? Oh, look, I said, indicating a minion in my settlement who was holding strange metal canister in his hands. Amy ignored me, so I used my appraisal on the item in the minion's hand. Name, coffee thermos. Occupation, heated beverage container. Species, thermos, container. Level, 1 of 1. Alignment, neutral with the slight aftertaste of the last beverage it contained. Faction, Yopi's barista equipment. Coffee? What's that? I wondered.
Congratulations! For discovering the drink known to white elves as coffee, you unlock the ability to construct a hipster coffee shop.
Structures vendor. Hipster coffee shop, farming plot and bakery. Unlocks the ability to evolve an aesthetically challenged minion offspring who dwells on the greatness of the days of yore to barista. Required materials, quarried stone and timber. Have I mentioned how I hate this system? Amy asked. Chapter 34, Surprise Inspection? Name, Reve Div. Occupation, Womanizing Bard, Tin Rank Adventurer. Species, Half-Halfling Half-Orc. Level, 3 of 100. Alignment, believes himself to be resistible to women. Faction, Banished Loots. Name, Carl Longneck Smithson. Occupation, Traveling Merchant. Species, Human. Level, 1 of 100. Alignment, permanently deals with a Sornek. Faction, Warache and Federo Merchants Guild. Emu was sitting in the new hipster coffee shop and was nursing a rapidly cooling mug of coffee, with Goldie next to him, lapping the dark liquid from a bowl on the floor. I was possessing Lord Toad's Cander's body, as, for some reason, I could actually feel and taste while possessing him. Why are we spying on them? I asked, as Ema had insisted we stalk the pair as they went into the cafe. I took another sip of the scalding drink. It tasted like stagnant swamp water in a way, which I quite liked, though Ema had left his to cool after taking one sip and spitting it back into his wooden mug. Goldie too seemed to enjoy the beverage in her bowl, as it had already been refilled twice. You see the one with the long neck and short arms? He's our link to get a trade route permanently established. I've never heard of his city, I commented, recalling the appraisal info. Me either, but the encyclopedia says it lies only about 100 kilometers from here. So why are we stalking them like this? We're not stalking them, just observing. I'm trying to figure out if he's actually worth getting to know. Suddenly, the short half-halfling half-orc with the hairy feet and overly muscular face got up from the table and went over to the counter with his empty mug. I think they might be leaving, be prepared to follow them outside, Amy began, but then the short man jumped onto the counter and pulled the lute from his back and began strumming a solo on his strings furiously. I suddenly wished I didn't have the acute sense of hearing that possessing the Lord gave me, because I felt an intense rage overtake me. Reve Div has accidentally cast enraging taunt using his terrible lute playing. You feel an overwhelming urge to kill his instrument. While Emu and Goldie remained at the table, everyone else, even the long-necked human merchant, got up from their chairs and stormed the counter, quickly pulling the bard down and stomping on him, as though trying to extinguish a fire. When our collective senses returned to us, the bard lay dazed on the ground and his lute had been destroyed. Moments later, a cavalry toadkin entered the coffee shop and dragged the bard away to jail. I locked eyes with the merchant, whose whole body moved in tense joint-frozen stiffness as he carefully walked back to his unattended drink. Then I asked, "Want to help me set up a permanent trade route to your city?" "I can't believe that worked," Emu commented, as I hovered in the air next to him, watching as Carl Longneck Smithson was telling one of my new caravanners the route to his city, while also writing out an introductory letter for his merchant guild fellows in Warache and Federo. Nearby, my lord and his retinue were observing the exchange. "Sometimes you just have to ask," I replied confidently. "He keeps looking over towards your lord. I think he might be too scared not to comply." Sometimes a little strong-arming is no bad thing, I added. You're just happy because you get to evolve again soon. It was true. I had completed all but one of the requirements, and the last one was just the completion of my quadrant dividing walls, which only now lacked the outer wall to be finished. Unfortunately, productivity had dropped a bit due to a minor rebellion amongst the youngest builders, but after a handful of executions, we were back on track again. Where should I send these guys? I asked, looking at my wandering merchant trio. Their whole purpose is to wander, so just pick a direction and let them explore on their own. The wandering merchants looked a bit like snails, given the enormous suit covered in bags and whatnot that they wore. Only a tiny slit at the front of the stack of items allowed the minions to see, and their arms were so restricted they only had about 30 degrees of freedom. However, it was possible for them to still sell their wares, so it didn't truly matter if they were literally sealed into their wandering shop armor. Name: Wandering Merchant. Occupation: Wandering Merchant. Species: Toadkin. Level: 40 of 75. Alignment: claustrophobic and wants to sell all his wares to escape the suffocating doom of his wearable storefront. Faction: Toad Town Merchants Guild. I didn't realize we had a merchants guild, I remarked. It came with the marketplace, Emma informed me. Though it's more loose-knit than the Adventurers Guild. They also seem quite strong for being merchants, I added. They'll be by themselves, unlike the caravanners that can bring guards along, so they have to be, otherwise they won't make it far. But that long-necked human was really weak. Emma just shrugged. Almost in the exact same moment that I sent the wandering merchants off into the world, a puff that bore the stench of flowers and sulfur assailed us. Once again, I had to wonder why, even in my essence form, I could smell. Oh hi Wyonin. I greeted the imp cheerfully. Hey a Toad, and Emu. Who's your friend? I asked, looking at the shorter imp that cowered in Jan's shadow. The purple imp gestured towards his blue friend, whose features were overall sharper and less droopy, but more or less identical to his. This is my nephew Jaquavian Tavius. He's shadowing me during his apprenticeship to becoming an support imp himself. Hello Jaqualius Sativius. Jack is fine. The blue imp told me meekly. Why are you here? Emma asked bluntly. The little imp hid behind his uncle in fear. Emu, be nice or he'll punch you again, I warned. I'm not going to punch him, Jan told me. I'm just here to inspect how your system is doing. On cue, System came prancing down the street, holding hands with the butcher and executioner. Upon seeing the trio, Jack squealed in horror and disappeared in a puff of elderberries and sulfur. Oh, Emu, that's fucked. It's not our fault they look like that. He defended himself. Not only did you dress up one of your minions as the literal incarnation of our version of Hitler. Jan started. Who? I asked, but was promptly ignored. But you also have a minion cosplaying the unspeakable, unmentionable god of excruciating death, but only for imps, Baseller. What is wrong with you? Jan and the executioner locked eyes, and suddenly the black-clad minion broke free of System's grip and stormed towards the imp. With a horrified shriek, Jan vanished into a cloud of sulfur and gooseberries. I don't think that bodes well, I commented. System. What's wrong with you? Why would you antagonize our support imp like that? Ema scolded the doll. The two minions promptly returned to their jobs with a single command, but I couldn't help but wonder what the executioner thought, so I used my mind reader on him. Next time, Purple One. Next time.
Congratulations. Due to the cruel fate I've been dealt, I have developed an intense hatred of imps, even though most of my hardships are caused by you too.
That seems rather misplaced, Emma added. But rather them than us, I suppose.
Congratulations. I have also regained my old memories prior to having my mind rebooted.
Emma took a step back at this revelation. Oh. Chapter 35, Castletown Antics? I was bopping up and down violently as I waited for the final few bricks of quarried stone to be placed on my outer wall. Come on! Come on! Come on! Emu was still rather shaken by the reveal that System remembered everything, so he just lay atop Goldie despondently, while I flitted back and forth, urging my slavers to slave harder and push the builders to finish faster. As the outer wall completed, I felt a force drag my essence back into the settlement core within the tree cave.
Congratulations! For evolving into a castle town, your list of buildings available has expanded and your domain has grown to encompass the entire forest around your core. Additionally, you are now able to establish farmsteads, hamlets, and villages anywhere within your territory. Warning: your settlement is now hostile with every neighboring village, town, castle town, city, and capital. You must fight to protect your settlement. Conquering your neighbors allows you to add their territory to your own.
Toad! Toad! Wake up! I flew out of my cave like a drake soaring across the sky, my essence form feeling faster and stronger than ever before. A quick look at my essence pond in the corner of my vision showed, well, the same as always. But I definitely felt way stronger, as though my total available essence had tripled. As I crossed the sky, I saw smoke rising from the outermost wall that protected the residential and mercantile in the north of my settlement. I also noticed that the innermost area of my settlement had changed, mostly due to the tall tree in the castle's gardens undergoing a colossal growth spurt. Its canopy and long 20-meter-long drooping branches now overhung the entirety of the castle grounds, like some protective dome of bark and impenetrable wood. Hopefully its huge shadow would not rob the life-giving light from the other plants that filled the many recreational areas of the castle. I found Emu sitting atop Goldie, not far from where the fighting was taking place, though just far enough that none of the action could reach him. Even if, by his own words, he was immortal, it was clear he had no desire to experience death. He was busy ordering my guards, cavalrymen, archers, and sharpshooters. His ability to lead them was quite impressive, but then again, 2,000+ years prior, he had been a feared leader of every non-human race. What's happening? We're under attack by Earl Sharpie's men. It's only a small contingent, but they're still quite strong, with their average level around 40. How long have I been asleep? About 2 days. I'm sending Elle, I told him. The Jackicorn would devastate their forces for sure. I already called for her, but your lord is refusing to let her get injured. I'll possess him and make him move, I decided. Before I could do such a thing, however, a ululating honk shook the heavens and earth. Then, from the distant corner of the forest, an enormous monster lifted into the air and soared across the sky until it reached my settlement's walls. I instinctively used my appraisal on it. Name: Goose 4, Honking Calamity. Occupation: Demigod of Geese. Species: Hydra Goose. Level: 239 of 100. Alignment: World-ending calamity of evil. Faction: Geese versus literally all other lifeforms, except baristas. Oh Lord! I knew it! It evolved again! Look! Someone is clinging to its back! I pointed out, as the calamity came ever closer, its 4 sets of wings flapping in an asynchronous pattern that was mesmerizing to look at. Well spotted, Emu remarked. Wait, is that? Name: Yopi. Occupation: Barista Battle Brewer, Iron Rank Adventurer. Species: White Elf. Level: 19 of 100. Alignment: Misfortune Incarnate. Faction: Honking Calamity's Personal Coffee Brewer. It seems the Goose 4 let him live, after trying his coffee brew. I suppose that makes sense. It was quite delicious after all. Only monsters like that foul drink. Well, monsters and white elves. Am I a monster? Emu turned to stare at me with a deadpan expression. If you have to ask, you already have your answer. Yopi had always been called unlucky, but his current circumstances truly took that to a new height. In a sense, it could be argued that he was fortunate to have survived being killed by the Calamity Goose. But it was only thanks to the coffee brew that had spilled out of his ruined rucksack when he had nearly been obliterated by stray plasma fire shot from its toothed maw. The last week had been spent brewing many barrels of the bitter drink, which the monster devoured with gluttonous fury, each of its 4 heads needing their own barrel to drink from. He had barely slept all the while. The only true upside was that he still had Poppy by his side, who, using her limited repertoire of magic and unique perks, had managed to summon the various things he needed to brew using basic elemental magic and drawing from her personal dimensional storage, where she had, unbeknownst to him, kept tons of items he had thought lost or discarded. Now, however, he was unsure if the last week had just been a grace period before his death caught up to him. He held on to the steel-strong feathers of the enormous goose for, as it lifted from the ruined forest clearing and then soared across the sky, before nose-diving towards a group of 60 soldiers and mages, who were assailing the outer wall of the strange town he had brought Tabby to only a week prior. Opening all 4 of its maws, the Calamity vaporized, obliterated, decayed, and electrified the host of fighters, leaving the walls of the town unscathed, before landing with its earthquaking mass and feasting on the remains of those it had just slain. When naught but ashes, blood spatter, and errant bits of flesh remained, it once more took to the air and headed north. It was all Yopi could do to cling on to his new master's body, as they flew up past the lowest layer of clouds, reaching parts of the sky that was devastatingly frigid under normal circumstances. However, apparently conscious of its white elf brewer-slave, the goose used some of its magic to heat up its feathers, and also made them softer and a bit like those plants that stuck to clothes, such that Yopi could release his fearful grip and be enveloped in the cozy embrace of its feathers, Poppy hiding in his breast pocket. He had a brief thought that, perhaps, he was not that unlucky after all. "Did we just get saved by our nemesis? It looks like it won't return," I added. "Look at the direction it's flying. Oh, I'm sure it'll be back to harass us again." "You're being too pessimistic, Ema. And you're being unrealistic," he replied. "Anyway, I want to see my new requirements. It's a doozy, so prepare yourself." With a chubby hand, he swiped the elements from his encyclopedia out into the air, so that it became illuminated text that I could read. Evolution requirements. Castle town to capital. Build 3 farmsteads, 1 hamlet, and 1 village within your territory and ensure they are self-sufficient. Repel an attack on your settlement. Defeat Earl Sharpie Inkledinkle Johnson and conquer his castle town by installing a new lord of his castle. Conquer and take over all neighboring towns, villages, hamlets, and farmsteads that are not allied with you. Build 1 siege factory and craft engines of war, and utilize your Beast Inventor workshop to also construct beasts of war by combining beasts with siege engines. Build 2 barracks, evolve 2 aristocracy minions to commanders, and evolve 150 minions to footmen. Build a wizard's academy, and evolve 8 studious minions to acolytes, and then evolve them into wizards when they have mastered an element. Build 1 pacifist's guild office and evolve 3 peace-loving minions to diplomats, and establish peace treaties with at least 2 other settlements of town rank or higher. "Let's get to work," I announced. Ema sighed as he was wont to do lately. Actually, he had always been that way, so maybe it had nothing to do with me. "I deserve a pay raise, promotion, and long vacation when I'm done with you," he mumbled. "You mean we won't be together forever?" Ema looked suddenly horrified and began scrolling through his tome, but it kept turning up blank pages, which only made his expression worsen. "Oh Lord." 36. Engines/beasts of war? Structures crafting. Siege factory, castle, armory, forge, and anvil. Unlocks the ability to evolve a creative minion to siege engine builder, and enables the creation of engines of war. Required materials: quarried stone, timber, wrought iron, and bronze. "How do I get bronze?" I wondered, then I saw how Amu was pointing at my forges and anvils in my southern quadrant. I quickly got the hint. With a single ethereal gesture, my essence washed over the entire area of my settlement, evolving every building not already evolved. Unlike the incident from when I evolved my quarry, no minions died as a result of the sudden changes that every building underwent. Name: Upgraded Forge. Occupation: Forge. Species: Forge, Crafting, Building. Level: 2 halves. Alignment: Ready and able to smelt the metal of gods if necessary. Faction: Toad Town. You smithies! Make me bronze! Quick! Immediately, all 3 upgraded forges began pumping out copious amounts of dark life-smothering smog, which blanketed the entire area in ominous mist, though, thanks to the foresight of our settlement planning, it only really enveloped other buildings that similarly created smog or other byproducts that seemed to negatively affect my minions' motivation and productivity.
Congratulations! For refining bronze by making an alloy of copper mixed with tin and other worthless metals, you unlock the ability to craft bronze versions of all tools and weapons.
What's an alloy? I asked Emu. It's something that has the benefits of several metals, in this case making something stronger than copper by mixing it with other metals like tin. But isn't tin garbage? Yes. But we use it to make something strong? That makes no sense to me. Of course it doesn't, you're a toad after all. I am no longer simply a toad. I am a toadkin. Technically you're more related to a ghost than a humanoid. Anyway, if we get our hands on some zinc, we can make an alloy between that and copper called brass, which has a lot of benefits too. Metallurgy is complicated. Thank Deathheim you don't need to understand it to make it, he remarked. Towering over the armory and even the 4-story Fletchery, the siege factory was a behemoth of a building, though it wasn't much to look at, as it was basically just a tall square building with a lot of internal space for crafting large things. Its internal space was also crisscrossed by many gantries and walkways that would allow the builders within to easily work on structures that rose more than 6 meters off the ground. Next to it stood the Beast Inventor Workshop, which was as bizarre as the factory was plain. First off, it was round, like half an eggshell, though its roof/walls were covered in hexagonal shapes all along, and the building let off a steady hum of energy, as though charged by magical powers. Given its purpose and abilities, perhaps it was not too far-fetched an idea to believe it was in fact imbued with magic. A crazy minion came running with a copper shield and a frog cattle, which he parked outside the building before entering for his evolution. Strangely, the frog cattle just sat there with the shield on top of its head, looking pretty indifferent about whatever fate awaited it. I blasted the building with my essence, and there followed a cold blue light show that seemed to shoot out of every hexagonal plate that covered the large dome building. Instead of walking out of the enormous doorway that he had entered through, the evolved minion burst through the roof, a pair of goose wings adorning his back and his body a mix of several animals. He had the densely scaled gray head of a horned lizard, the dark brown torso of fuzzy bat, the arms of squirrel, and the legs of a pigeon. I inspected him as he landed before the frog he had abandoned. Name: Mad Scientist. Occupation: Mad Scientist. Species: Chimera Minion. Level: 30 of 50. Alignment: endlessly creative and full of terrifying ideas that would offend even the most lenient gods. Faction: Toad Town and Chimera Appreciators Anonymous. Before I could even task him with anything, he dragged the frog cattle into the strange building with one hand, while holding the copper shield in the other. There followed a continuous trembling that made every building nearby creak and protest as the fundament below them shifted ever so slightly. Then a horrifying stretched-out screech tore through the air, like the heralding horn of the end time sounding before the appearance of one of its harbingers. Ominous cold blue light shone through the large gate of the building as it slowly opened, then the first intentionally crafted beast of war emerged. The ground was left with large footprints as it slowly moved across the district, taking in the sensations of the world around it. Amu, who had been anxiously watching from nearby, suddenly piped up. "Is that a turtle?" "It's a tortoise," I corrected him. Name: Arnold. Occupation: war beast. Species: copper-shield tortoise chimera. Level: 60 of 60. Alignment: feels undefeatable. Faction: Toad Town. It was a 2.5-meter tall, 5-meter wide tortoise with pale red scaly skin, a narrow triangular head with glowing white eyes, devastatingly crushing blocky teeth, dangerously sharp rending claws on its 6 legs, and a shell made purely of matte copper. As Emu observed it, he seemed to notice something nestled between the Beast Inventor Workshop and Siege Factory. "Toady, don't tell me that's the Flesh Crafter's Laboratorium! Surprise! Delete it from existence. No! Do you even know what it can do? It's really dangerous. But he's already fixed up several of our minions who should have died," I argued back. "Wait. Is this why I keep seeing minions with more than 2 arms and blades that can pop out of their legs and torsos? Isn't it neat? Seriously. Get rid of it." "No." Amos sighed, then made a weird hiccuping sound as he beheld the flesh crafter who momentarily came out of the unassuming laboratorium. Why doesn't he have any skin?" "Who knows?" The flesh crafter minion was a red, permanently bleeding, skinned humanoid that lacked any of the traits of my beautiful toadkin. He wore a stone mask with a flat mouth and round eye holes, and 2 sets of triple-jointed arms grew from his shoulder blades like the legs of a spider. Name: Goddard. Occupation: Flesh Crafter. Species: Ascendant. Level: Unknown. Alignment: Faction: The Flayed Lady. What do you think we can craft if we combine the Siege Factory, Laboratorium, and Beast Workshop? I think I need a sick leave. My stomach feels like it's suddenly manifested 13 ulcers. For reasons I couldn't fully explain, I used my mind reader on the flesh crafter, and the result surprised me. "I know you can hear this, Toad. I know everything about you. I have seen in the stars the path you will take and the chaos that is sure to dog your heels at every turn. But I support your ascendancy, for it is sure to bring a change to the world that will benefit me and my kindred spirits. Praise be to the chaos and the roaring depravities you will unveil by bringing your terrible might to bear upon all those witless beings that exist in this mortal plane." "Yeah. I need a break," Ema concluded and left. Chanel 37, you're a wizard? Name: Viola. Occupation: runaway. Species: human. Level: 1 of 100. Alignment: unerringly positive. Faction: the Runaways Club. Viola walked through the gate to the town in the woods. After wandering around aimlessly for nearly 2 weeks, she had somehow ended up here. At this point, she was glad to have found civilization again. It might have been hasty, but she had run away from home with only enough supplies for a week, after her parents had forced her into a marriage with a horrid old farmer. As she collapsed onto the ground of the forest town, a man with big eyes and lips, as well as scaly rubbery skin, came over to her and handed her a loaf of bread. He wore a white priest's robe and seemed to genuinely worry about her. "Come to worship?" he asked, his voice heavily accented as though a fist-sized ball of phlegm was stuck in his throat. "I'm just looking to find a job," Viola answered, though in truth it was far from what she truly wanted. The priest shrugged and left. She stared at him leaving for a moment, then took a bite out of the bread. It was both soft and chewy in equal measure, and was the best damn thing she'd ever ingested. It was nothing like the stale hardtack they made at home in her village. But maybe the taste was also exaggerated by her days of starving, having eaten nothing but forest mushrooms and leaves. I could really go for some meat though, she thought to herself as she began walking down the main avenue of the big town. In the distance, an enormous tree spread its drooping branches over a magnificent castle built from gleaming stone. It looked like an oak, but with the branches of a weeping willow. It was so massive a landmark that she'd been able to follow it through the forest to this place. It wasn't her first time exploring the silken forest, and she could have been certain that no people lived within it just a year prior. As she walked past uniform houses, she eventually found what looked like a marketplace. People, all with rubbery skin, big eyes and lips, and some with scales, ran back and forth or carted items to and from other parts of the city. The scent of roasting meat instantly drew her over to a grill atop a fire pit, where a man, who looked identical to the priest minus the scales, was flipping what looked like enormous frog legs over flaming coals. It smelled absolutely divine, so she asked to receive one of the enormous legs. The grill man held out a hand and she wondered what he was asking her, but then remembered she had brought some coins that she had stolen from her parents. She gave him one of the tin ones that was enough to buy bread in her village, but the man took it and looked at it weirdly, before extending his hand again. Someone else, a little chubby black boy who stood on the back of a large mustard-yellow toad, put a copper coin into the palm of the grill man, and she was handed her enormous grilled frog leg and got to keep her tin coin. "We use tokens in this town," he explained. He looked incredibly tired and had a naturally jaded expression and way of speaking that made her wonder if he wasn't way older than his appearance showed. "I've never heard of that currency before," she replied. "But thank you. I was starving." The boy nodded and then handed her a linen sack that clinked with coins. "I'll trade you this for whatever kind of coins you have." It seemed a fair deal to her, so she gave him the 6 tin coins and 8 iron chips and single silver coin with a hole in it. "You want a ride?" he asked, patting the back of his large toad that he was standing atop of. Even standing on its back, Viola was still taller than him. She had been warned about men asking her to get into their carriages or on the back of their horses, but she was unsure if it extended to small chubby boys asking her about getting on the back of their unnaturally large toads. "Okay," she answered and climbed onto its back. As they hopped down through the city, she pulled chunks of meat off the frog leg and swallowed them with voracious fury. "This is delicious! The bread from here was great too. Is all food in this city this tasty? If you don't question where it comes from, then yes. Our vegetables are quite flavorful too. We have a few types of fruit as well, like melon and gooseberries. Where can I get those?" "There's a general store nearby." "Is that where we're going?" "No, I'm taking you to a well." "A well? Why? Aren't you thirsty?" Viola had a quick thought and realized that, yes, she was parched. "How did you know?" The boy tapped the side of his head knowingly. "I have a sense for these things. After all, I have watched hundreds perish from lack of food and drink." "That's grim." "You bet. But fortunately, things are mostly better now." As she finished the last bit of meat on the frog leg, the boy asked if he could have the bones for his mount. She wondered if a toad, even one so big, would fancy bones, but it turned out that the mustard-yellow Goldie was quite a fan of the marrow within, and she crunched the bones to powder in her big rubbery soft mouth. "My name's Amuxaquit, by the way," the boy told her as he helped her off the back of the toad. "But you can just call me Emma. I'm Viola." "Well, Viola, what's your dream job?" She thought about it for a bit, twiddling her silver hair. "I think I want to be a wizard." "A wizard, EY?" Emma handed her a coin. This one was made of pure gold. Never before had she held something so valuable in her hands. With this one coin she could have bought every house and farming plot in her village and still had enough left over to pay for 100 servants to do everything she asked. "Throw that in the well over there and wish to become a wizard," he told her. She almost wanted to tell him that it would be a waste of something so extremely valuable, but there was an aura of certainty and trust about him that she couldn't deny. She cupped the golden coin between her hands and held it up to her forehead, imbuing it with every fragment of her desire, then she flipped it from her thumb so that it spun end over end towards the well. It landed short, hitting the stone rim, before hopping into the water with a heavy splash. Viola quickly ran over and peered down into the dark water, seeing her green eyes reflected back up at her, and the twinkling flawless golden coin spinning as it plummeted deeper and deeper. Mandatory wishing well quest. Ensure Viola becomes a wizard. Is this why you wanted me to build the Wizard's Academy? I asked Emu. I'd hovered next to him as he accompanied the strange-looking young girl through my settlement. Check out her status screen now, he told me through his thoughts. Sure enough, when I inspected her with appraisal again, her status had changed. Name Viola. Occupation, aspiring wizard. Species, wish-blessed human. Level, 1 of 100. Alignment, unerringly positive and wish-blessed. Faction, the Wishing Well-Blessed Individuals Anonymous. I didn't realize my wells had this power, I remarked. All wells can do this, though. When a wishing coin is tossed into a well that is in the territory of a core, you basically have no choice but to fulfill it. Granted, there's a popular trend of twisting a person's wish, but if you do that, I will ensure you regret it. He seemed rather serious about making sure this random silver-haired girl became a wizard. I hadn't even thought of subverting her genuine wish though, as that seemed something only a monster would do. Who would even want to mess with someone else's wish? Isn't that super evil? A lot of the cores that serve Lady Light have a habit of perverting the wishes so they somehow benefit the Church of Light. Some of my Deathheim colleagues like to twist them so they end up promoting undeath and such. Like, if you ask to be with your loved one forever, they would make it so your loved one becomes an undying lich, that sort of thing. And you call me a monster? It seemed hard to believe, but the following day, Viola was enrolled into the one and only Wizard's Academy in the city. It lay next to the castle, so she was guided to its entrance by a pair of mounted guards, who wore dangerous-looking armor and carried long-bladed spears. The academy itself was a tall 8-story tower that seemed too small to actually fit more than 6 people per floor, but when she passed through its front door, it was shown to be larger on the inside than outside. Within, a handsome-looking man wearing the skin of a toad was waiting for her. Welcome, Acolyte. Over the next week, Viola underwent a series of trials to test whether she had any innate magic in her body that could be molded and empowered. She failed the first 3 trials with the elements, water, fire, and earth. However, when she got to the wind trial, which consisted of standing atop a pillar in the middle of a pond that had somehow been built on the 6th floor, she discovered to her own surprise that she had an affinity for the wind element. And not just a fledgling affinity, but a genuinely powerful affinity. Thinking back on her childhood, she suddenly realized that all the times when powerful storms had hit her village and the forest nearby had coincided with her mood being bad. Additionally, when she had run through the sloping hills of the southern forest region, it had been as though she was held aloft by the gentle hands of a supporting breeze. After discovering her affinity, she was molded and trained by the Toadcaller to properly harness her innate power and make it stronger. At the end, she realized that she had the ability to summon mighty tornadoes or devastating lightning storms. The chubby boy found her when she graduated as a fully fledged wizard and told her that she was the first that their city Toad Town had known. But then he asked her again, "What do you want to do now?" Viola thought about it for a bit, then realized that she didn't truly want to be a wizard, but rather that she wanted to open her own restaurant and make delicious food. She told him as much, and though he looked surprised at first, he smiled and told her that she should find a spot in the city and a restaurant would be built for her.
Congratulations! For following the desire of a powerful wind wizard to open a restaurant, you have unlocked the ability to construct the unique building Wind Wizard's All-You-Can-Eat Buffet.
Structures vendor. Wind Wizard's All-You-Can-Eat Buffet, farming plot, bakery, and Wizard's Academy. Allows a young, devastatingly powerful wind wizard to follow her dreams of becoming a chef. Greatly boosts happiness in everyone who dines here. Required materials: quarried stone, timber, and wrought iron. Isn't this kind of a waste of so powerful a wizard? I asked, looking at the young girl's news stats. Name Viola. Occupation S-tier wind wizard and up-and-coming chef. Species wish blessed human. Level 99 of 100. Alignment unerringly positive and ready to be chef. Faction the Follow Your Dreams Club. We both watched the young wizard use her magical talents to cut up and grill food over a massive roaring fire that was fed by her magic. Look at it this way, Amos started. If anyone attacks our town, we have one of the most powerful wizards in the world to defend us. And I mean, look at all the minions who are looking forward to trying out her food. He was right. In the seating area of her new restaurant, which lay not far from the wishing well that she had used, 4 dozen minions from all walks of life were eagerly waiting to try out her food. And who knows, maybe you can finally get a hold of a happy minion and actually begin selling toys in your toy store. Alright, I'm convinced. Wizard Grill for the wind. Please don't begin to do puns. I'll actually die. Chapter 38 Lord of Toads? I was possessing the body of my mare as I stood before the doorway of the laboratorium. I looked around suspiciously, making sure no one was watching me as I went inside. Within the building were a bunch of stone slabs, bone saws and super sharp blades, as well as meat hooks hanging from the ceiling and a vast organized shelf system of every possible bone imaginable. Additionally, barrel-shaped vats full of strange gloopy soup stored genetic samples that the flesh crafter had collected during his tenure in my town as the sole physician for my minions and their ails. The man himself leant against one of the slabs that occupied the center of the floor. I'm glad you decided to take me up on my offer, he told me. You said you could make me a toad vessel. How could I possibly refuse? Quite right. And how prudent of you not to tell the chubby little boy about it. He wouldn't understand. The skinless doctor nodded sagely. My work is often frowned upon by those who fail to see the big picture. So, what do you need me to bring you? Oh, it's rather simple, Toad. I only require you to bring me 7 of your evolved toadkin. That's odd, Emu commented as we were watching the construction of my first barrack in the southwest of my settlement. What is? I replied, despite knowing exactly what he had noticed. 7 minions just all died at once. There was probably just another rock slide in the quarry, I told him. Yeah. You know, I've been meaning to talk to you about the work conditions there. Why? Well, you said it yourself, it kills a lot of minions. Minions die all the time, it's nothing suspicious. Why are you so paranoid? I didn't say it was suspicious. Rather, it seems disturbingly commonplace. Emu turned to look at where I hovered in the air. Are you hiding something from me? I'm not deliberately killing my minions. I think they would disagree. We just had our 3rd worker riot 2 days ago. It's not my fault they're lazy. You know, I thought you'd warm up to your minions more now that they've become some misbegotten toad species of humanids, but it seems to only have made you more hateful of your unevolved minions. I said we wouldn't need it, but I think it's time. Emu flung out his arms and an entry from my crafting list appeared. Structures Worship. Minion Help Center. A place for minions to gather and share grievances about their working conditions and negotiate better treatment from their core, as well as receiving the ability to call the Deathheim Incorporated Minion Unionization Hotline for help in settling disputes and such with their core. Required materials, wood and stone. Structures Motivation. Consultation Clinic, Workbench and Bakery. Unlocks the ability to evolve a cold-hearted minion into a therapist and increases minion motivation in nearby structures. Required materials, stone, timber, and wrought iron. If we build these, will you get off my back? You're smothering me with all your unfounded paranoia. Geez, you're really strung out, Toady. But yes, I'll give it a rest. Fine. Fine. He continued looking at me with narrowed eyes. My deal with the flesh crafter came to fruition at the same time that my first barrack, the Minion Help Center, and the consultation clinic all were constructed. Given that most causes of the lately quite frequent riots and worker rebellions came from the diggers and smithies, although the builders were becoming a headache as well, I placed both of the minion welfare buildings near the quarry in the southern quadrant, and evolved the prerequisite therapist for the clinic. The cold-hearted minion was easy enough to find, given that a lot of mentally unstable minions gathered near the cattle pen to observe the frog cattle as they were dragged to the butcher shop, while their brethren sang their morning song. I was once again using the mayor's body, when I reconvened with the wicked doctor at his laboratorium. When I entered the building again, there was a fresh coat of blood on most of the interior, and the organ vats were brimming with new samples. In the center of the room, between the slabs, stood my new vessel at nearly 2 meters in height. The body had 4 powerful legs, each with clawed-webbed feet. The back was covered in tiny self-regenerating pods that could launch a bunch of rabid gnasher toads, a new kind of toad that the fleshcrafter had invented, which had a body the size of one of my minions' heads, powerful flensing teeth from some sort of wicked warmwater fish, and thorny bodies like that belonging to a horned lizard. The body itself was like a toad carved from stone and given coiled powerful muscles and reinforced bones underneath its unbreakable epidermis. It had 2 large abyss-black eyes and a huge maw that could swallow a prey the size of a horse, not to mention a tongue that looked powerful enough to smash a hole through one of the stone walls that surrounded my town. Name: Lord of Toads. Occupation: unoccupied soul vessel. Species: vessel soul. Level: 0 of unknown. Alignment: unknown. Faction: unknown. It's perfect. What the fuck is that? Emi yelled in outrage as I hopped proudly down the main avenue of my northern quadrant, whilst possessing my new vessel. I ignored his tirade as I took in all the sensations this vessel afforded me. I could feel the world around me, both the physical and metaphysical elements. I could sense touch and notice even the slightest vibrations that every single living being exuded around me. I could taste scents on the air, and see the trails that left behind the many scents. I could feel and manipulate the pockets of ambient magic that seemed to float around my domain as though pollen falling from my core at the crown of the enormous weeping oak. In short, it was everything I'd ever wanted from a body. I felt ready to take on Earl Sharpie, Lady Light and her insane church, Deathheim and his asinine unions. I felt immortal. Chapter 39. Sound the chirps of war?
Congratulations! For becoming an awe-inspiring symbol of the greatness of toads, you have gained the Toad Idol perk. Toad Idol: all temples and churches within your domain are turned towards Toaddom. All members of the toadkin species now naturally revere you for being an exemplary of toadness. Every humanoid that reveres you increases your maximum essence reservoir by 1 point.
Did you just become a false god? Ema deadpanned. All by hopping around in that insane-looking toad automaton that I'm 97.89% sure is made of several dead minions. I think System loves me, because I finally feel that I'm given the proper respect that I deserve, as a paragon of toad kind. I highly doubt there's any sort of rational or logical thought behind these achievements and unlockables. I mean, look at her. Since you evolved that toy store vendor, she has been running circles around town, while holding a toad plushie in the air. The former priest of light in our church seems fine with the switch, I argued. Once you're a religious fanatic, it doesn't really matter which absurd deity or non-deity you worship. I mean, have you seen how many tokens he makes every day from just doing 2-hour-long monologue rants about arbitrary things? Yesterday, he spent his sermon talking about why bread was inferior to porridge. I thought you said you were going to take a vacation, I reminded him. Every time I look away for just 2 minutes, you've done something insane, so obviously that won't be a possibility. Well, as your master. You're not my master, no matter how powerful you become, that'll never happen. Ever. As your core, I corrected myself. I demand you take a week off from being my guiding fairy. There's no way that's happening. Ama replied confidently, but then. Mandatory guiding fairy quest. Take a break, boy. All guiding fairy abilities have been locked for the following 7 days. Preparing to transport Boy and Goldie to Tropical Vacation Island number 29. You've got to be kidding me, he groaned. Of course the system would take your side on this. You're both out of your minds. See you in a week, I said, and waved at him with one of my webbed front feet as he and Goldie began to fade from existence. I took a moment to savor the silence that followed, then took a look at my new essence pond. Before unlocking Toad Idol, my essence had been at 60, but now, it sat at 173 just from all Toadkin in my settlement automatically worshipping me. Using my powerful toady legs, I leapt high into the air and then, at the apex of the jump, I released a burst of essence that washed over every single one of my houses, evolving them and increasing them all by 1 story. For some reason, those houses closer to the center of my town became more distinguished and nice-looking, while those closer to the outer walls became grimy and run down. As though responding to this sudden change in my town, a bunch of idle minions paired up in 2s, 3s, and 4s, all running into the evolved houses and doing their duty to increase my population. A bit later, I was watching my second barracks as it finished its construction. The first already had a new aristocrat commander and 24 forcefully conscripted footmen. Near the second barracks, which lay near the armory and fletchery, a bunch of aristocrats stood waiting, perhaps sensing a golden opportunity to finally become a Toadkin, as many of them had been evolved prior to my superior Toad Genes perk being unlocked. Hiding from the crowd of haughty minions was an aristocrat I remembered as having been ousted for proposing breeding in the Gentlewomen's Club. I decided to pick him to become the new commander of the barracks, and the 75 footmen it could contain within its sleeping quarters. As he skipped towards the entrance of the completed building, all the other aristocrats followed him scornfully with their eyes, but they were created of lazy and unproductive stock, so they were unlikely to do much except bicker and complain. I sent a torrent of essence into the barracks, and golden light shone out the windows and from under the doors, making it seem as though a caged sun was held within the building. Then a poof of smoke blew the door open and covered the ground as the new commander walked out with a stern look on his face. Like my first commander, he wore a fancy suit of frog hide and a fancy beret with a goose feather poking out the back. I quickly called my slavers to action, and they began rounding up a bunch of idle and unassigned newborn minions that were then herded into the barracks. Until I had the 75 I required, then I sent them to put the rest inside the first barracks. Using my pinpoint evolution that I had fully mastered with becoming a castle town, I evolved all 75 minions at once, without any of them melting together to form a meatball of rubbery flesh and too many arms. Then I leapt across town and landed before the other barracks where I did the same. As all my footmen finished evolving, I called upon them and their commanders to march out the northern part of my town to prepare for my first attempt at making war on humans. Additionally, I called upon my cavalrymen and archers to join them, leaving my guards and sharpshooters to keep my town secure, with the aid of my ruthless slavers, executioner, and jailers. I also had 2 newly evolved wizards join my army, though both were far weaker than Viola, who now ran the Wizards' Buffet in the residential district of the Northern Quadrant. Although Toadscander seemed more than interested in leading this army, I decided that I should be the one to do it, as, with the Castletown evolution, it had finally been made possible for me to venture beyond my domain, though Amos seemed to have implied there were many reasons why I absolutely shouldn't do it, but he wasn't here now, so I willfully ignored his past warnings. After all, I was a Lord of Toads and an idol worthy of worship. What could go wrong? Chapter 40, Surprise Encounter? Emu was leaned back in the wicker chair on the shore of the paradise realm he had been teleported to. Goldie sat next to him, lapping up her 8th bowl of strawberry daiquiri. He was unsure if she drank it because she genuinely liked the taste or because it looked like blood. Toads were genuinely beginning to terrify him. He leant back more and let out an audible sigh of contentment. The magic imbued into the wicker chair made it capable of vibrating such that it released all the tension in his body and made his chubby flesh soft like a newborn babe's. With a yawn, he took a peek around and made the big mistake of locking eyes with a woman who lay only a few meters away on her own massaging wicker chair. "Oh no! Hi there! Would you like to hear about Our Lady and Savior, Lady Light? Please, I'm on a vacation. And so are you, by the look of things." She got up from her chair, and sure enough, it was the very same missionary that had found their town and nearly caused a very irate goddess to wipe them from existence. "Lady Light teaches us that there is no such thing as a day of rest, when the world is still inhabited by infidels. But you must know that I'm not one of her witless flock of brainwashed humans. Look at me! I'm clearly a guiding fairy. This is clearly not the mortal realm either. I mean, how did you even come to be here in the first place? I thought only people like me were allowed to traverse the figment between realms. My lady was so pleased with my work performance that she sent me here. She's forgotten to send me back to the mortal realm though, so I've been using the opportunity to preach to all those who come here. I should have known this place was too good to be true. It's a blessed tourist trap for indoctrination. Now listen or I'll purge you." Ema looked down at his toady companion that sat next to his wicker chair and whispered, "Goldie, you don't perchance find missionary flesh to be delectable, do you?" The mustard-yellow toad croaked dully in response. "Didn't think so. Gathered faithful, today I have come to preach the good word of Our Lady Light, the holiest of holy. It is by her divine grace that you today are allowed to prosper. I say to you, gathered sheeplings, would you like to shed your woolen coats and attain enlightenment?" Emu got up from his wicker chair, his soft belly fat overhanging the rim of his bathing shorts. "I can't take this any more. I've listened to your asinine sermons so many times. No more. No more, I say. That sounds dangerously like heresy to my ears," the missionary warned, her eyes narrowing. He did notice that she was also wearing a bathing suit though. Clearly she wasn't as devout as she claimed herself. "I don't care what you think. Fuck your goddess. She's a total bully." She looked incensed. "You dare? What are you gonna do to me, Judetta? You have no power here. This is a violence-free zone. There will be no purging. Just wait until I get back to the mortal realm. You will definitely be purged for bad-mouthing my lady. As if that even matters. Have you not heard? Toad just became a usurper god and all temples within his expanding lands will be turned to revering him and Toadkin as a master race." Her narrow eyes narrowed further, as though she didn't quite believe him. "But you'll be stuck here forever. Admit it, your lady forgot about you. It's more than likely that she put you here after embarrassing herself by being unable to smite our system dull." "No. She wouldn't. She's like super caring and really kind. She's only nice when you do what she says and don't question her." "Well, yeah, she's super wise, so obviously she wouldn't care what us meaningless mortals think. Honestly, that logic is so flawed I can't even believe you don't find it absurd yourself." Judetta looked poised to argue back, but then her posture slumped and she suddenly seemed really defeated. Emu knew that he had struck a nerve. After all, there was no way any sensible human didn't have some apprehensions about their lives, particularly when they were members of an insanely fanatical cult. A few days later, after spending a long time basically acting as Judetta's therapist to help her deal with all her worries and troubles caused by her religious cult, a new person appeared, though one who was already familiar to him, unfortunately. "Ema. How's it going? It's been centuries, hasn't it? Belle? What are you doing here? Aren't you helping that volcano core in the Northwestern Sea?" "Oh, he died. Cataclysmic self-destruction. Quite spectacular. Unless you're mortal and can die, you know, 'cause then it must have sucked." Ema sighed. Bella Muranthine was a fairy who had evolved from a fire-attributed dungeon core about a millennium back, But instead of joining Deathheim Incorporated, she had started working for Papa Magma to specifically guide fire or fire-adjacent cores. Given the proclivities of such cores, most had the tendency to catastrophically self-implode or meltdown if they didn't end up being destroyed by nearby civilizations due to their detrimental impact on the local ecosystems. In fact, undead cores were less likely to be targeted than fire cores, given that zombies and skeletons could provide free tireless labor to the nearby kingdoms and thus were often seen as a boon, unless the Church of Light got involved. But Papa Magma gave you a vacation anyway? Oh no, he sent me here to fetch you. Wait, why? It's because of your core. It came across one of his favorite dungeons. Ima felt a ball of ice form in his stomach. And? What happened? He, made it? I guess? That's what I was told anyway. My core ate another core? Like an actual dungeon core? As I understand it, his army ransacked the entire region and ousted the local earl, then found a poor dungeon who lived inside a mountain, and well, they tore their way through it and then ate the core. Amos sighed deeply. All right, I'll see what I can do about it. All in all, this had not been a very good vacation. End of chapter. If you enjoy the story, please leave a like and comment to let me know you want more. Make sure to support the author by liking the official story page on Royal Road, link in the description. Links to the author's Discord group or Patreon can also be found in the description.